Uh, let's start now. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. On behalf of WAN-IFRA, I extend a warm welcome to you all. Today we have more than 250 registrations for this event, and I thank you all for joining us today. Joining me in the opening session is Mr. Mohit Jain, Executive President of Bennett Coleman Company Limited and Board Member of WAN-IFRA, and also the President of Indian Newspaper Society. A warm welcome to Mr. Mohit Jain. And I also warmly welcome our keynote speaker of today's event, Mr. Stig Ørskov, CEO of Politikens Hus from Denmark. And I'd like to welcome all the speakers who will join us today, later, and on the next 2 days. And I thank them all for sharing the insights with us. Ever since the pandemic started, WAN-IFRA has pivoted to offer programs virtually to our members. This year, we started the year with the Digital Media India 2022 conference in the month of March, and we had more than 320 participants in the program. We continued your program on subscription bootcamp, helping news publishers to move to get registered users and increasing the digital subscribers. This program received tremendous response. We also offered masterclass virtually on video accelerator and print and digital infographics. Our next program next month is short form video sprint in hybrid format, supported by Meta Journalism Project India. We have more programs coming up in the following months, and WAN-IFRA is the forefront, helping your members and news publishers with expertise and ideas to transform the organization and to prosper in the digital world. Please reach out to us if you would like to participate in any of the programs and if you have ideas and suggestions for us going forward. Thank you. The program today and the next 2 days is curated to discuss some of the hot button topics facing your industry, and I'm sure you all will like this program. The program would not have been possible if not for the gracious support from our sponsors, Google News Initiative for the Platinum sponsorship, Piano for the Silver sponsorship, and Chartbeat for the Bronze sponsorship. Also, I'd like to thank our supporting publication, G-Express, Indian Printer and Publisher, and Rin Survey. Please take time to explore our events portal for information on our sponsors, and also please make use of the networking opportunities and virtual calling feature of this event platform. And also please post your questions to the speakers in the live Q&A box and engage with the event. We'll answer them towards the end of the presentation. Thank you all for joining today and wish you a good conference. May I now invite Mr. Mohit Jain, Executive President of Bennett Coleman Company Limited and Board Member of WAN-IFRA and President of Indian Newspaper Society, for his opening remarks. Over to you, Mr. Mohit Jain.
Thank you, Magdoum, very much. And I welcome all the delegates to the Indian Media Leaders E-Summit, which is the third annual event of WAN-IFRA for the news media leaders in South Asia. And as Magdoum mentioned, the event has attracted more than 250 delegates to the summit. And events like this, they show our collective effort to find solutions to industry problems, and which I'm very pleased to see the participation. And there could not have been a better time for this event because the pandemic is now seeming to be behind us. And there is a cautious optimism in the market. There are many challenges, but at the same time, there are several opportunities. And we will see later in the day from the CEO roundtable that what are their thoughts around the opportunities that are emerging for us. We will see in the day also the enormous thought which will come in from our next keynote speaker, Mr. Stig Ørskov from JP Politikens. And the day 2 of the summit will focus on the issues that are impacting our newsrooms and the new ways of working which are induced by the pandemic. Day 3 of the summit will discuss the revenue opportunities and what it makes to understand the needs of the readers and advertisers. We are in for a knowledge treat, and a well-rounded discussion on issues is in front of us. I will certainly like to say that an event of this nature is not possible without the support of our sponsors. And as the board member of WAN-IFRA, I would like to thank the Google News Initiative, Piano, and Chartbeat for the support on this event. And before I end my session, I just want to say one more point, that there are people who walk up to us and ask a question about the news media and the newspapers in particular, that whether it is a sunset or a sunrise industry now. I just want to submit that newspapers or news media in general are related to one common thread, and that is content. And content is linked to a very basic human need. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs had talked about food, safety, and shelter going up to self-actualization. But there is something which is missing over there, and that is curiosity. Curiosity is also a very basic human need. And curiosity is somewhere which is linked to content, because we're generally interested to know that what is happening around us. We need to build awareness. Until the time the curiosity in human nature will survive or will remain, content will never get out of fashion. So that is my just general take on this, Magdoum. And I thought I would share my personal viewpoint with the delegates over here. I'm delighted to be a part of this conference, and I welcome the delegates once again. And I thank WAN-IFRA for giving me this opportunity to open this forum. And I hope everybody will just enjoy this event, which is a 3-day event, and it takes a lot of effort to put it in. And I thank the organizers of WAN-IFRA for having arranged this. Thank you so much, Magdoum. And I would leave the rest of the session to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mohit Jain. And it's well said. Definitely, the curiosity will keep us going. And I'm sure that newspapers industry will survive along with other formats of media, I'm sure. And thank you for the opening remarks. Now we'll move on to the keynote presentation. Our keynote speaker today is Mr. Stig Ørskov, CEO of JP Politikens Hus, one of Denmark's leading media companies in print, digital, and mobile publications, and the leading titles Ekstrabladet, Jyllands-Posten, and Politikens. Before becoming CEO of JP Politikens Hus, Stig Ørskov was a COO and member of the executive board of JP Politikens Hus AS. And before joining Politikens Hus, he also co-founded an online newspaper called InfoPact. And interestingly, Stig is also the co-author of best-selling biography of Danish ship magnate Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller. I'm sure I'm going to look for a copy, so I hope it is available in English. And Stig also holds a degree in public economics and regulation from the Roskilde University, and he studied economics from the University of Copenhagen and history at the University of Melbourne. He will talk to us about the recipes for growth and share insights from the Danish market. Warm welcome, Stig, and then the floor is open to you now.
Thank you so much, Magdoum, and thank you for that perfect lead, Mr. Mohit Jain. I will speak about content and the true and tremendous value of content and how we've used that to make a growing business out of these tremendous opportunities in this industry. But before I come to that, I have to take you through some more difficult years, which I will try to do here. I'll share my screen with you, and I'll just go a bit back here in my presentation. What I will try to share with you today is how 2 decades of transformation created the foundation for double-digit growth for JP Politikens Media Group. And I have to warn you, the double-digit growth came recently, but it's here now, and we are actually expecting more of it for the coming years. So I will try to give you an idea about how that happened to us. Yeah, just a few words about myself, but I think, Magdoum, you've already been there. I'm the CEO of JP Politikens Media Group. I've been working as a journalist for quite a lot of years in financial journalism primarily, and then I was the editor-in-chief at Politiken for some years, one of our newspapers in this group. And since 2019, I've had the big honor to be vice president of WAN-IFRA. So from me, also a big thank you to our sponsors, and a big welcome to Mr. Mohit Jain on board of the WAN-IFRA board. We're looking forward to the cooperation as well. What is JP Politikens Media Group? As Magdoum said, we are the leading news media group in Denmark. We publish 3 of the leading Danish national titles. We also run a book publishing business. And last but not least interesting, we also run Denmark's largest last mile distribution network. And that comes out from our distribution of newspapers to subscribers. And that's really interesting in these e-commerce days. I might get back to that as well. Very important for me to say is that the JP Politiken Media Group is based on the principle of editorial independence. So that means that each of our newspapers has their own editor-in-chief responsible for the content. So I have no influence whatsoever on the content. I'm just the CEO. Even though I'm a journalist and I really miss working with journalism, I have to accept that. As you see, our turnover is around 400 to 500 million euros a year, and we run a quite healthy margin these years. Going on, this is our footprint. For those of you who know a bit about Europe, you can see we are primarily in Denmark. That's our core market, but we also have positions in Norway, Sweden, Germany, and the UK. And here you see our titles and our brands. Just a few words about our core market. As I expect that not all of you know that much about Denmark, we are a very small country, just 6 million people. I think that will qualify for not even a top 5 of Indian cities. So we are a very small country. Quite a large GDP per capita, around 60,000 euros per year. And I think at the moment the euro and the dollar is on par. So it's very much the same in US dollars. A quite highly educated country as well. 30% has a bachelor degree or something above that. And at the same time, we have almost since the beginning of the century have a 90% internet penetration. So that gives quite a lot of opportunities for development of our business. Yeah, what I'll do now is I'll take you a short walk down memory lane in order for you to sort of understand where we came from and how we built the business. And I promise you it will be short, but not so sweet because we had some troublesome years. But until the beginning of this century, everything was good. We ran this one-horse race based on this very simple business model. We had content sales based on subscription, which has always been quite big in Denmark. Home delivery of papers has been a really big part of our business, but at the same time, we had single copy sales. And besides that, we had a very healthy advertising business, apart from broadcasting and a small bit of radio in Denmark. We didn't have any really tough competitors in the market. So that was really, brilliant years, stable revenues, stable profits, and everything was good. And then we thought that when the internet arrived, it was going to be even better and bigger, because what we gained there was access to a larger audience, especially in the beginning of the century. And actually, we talked about a new golden era for journalism at that time, because we saw the possibility of actually reaching new audience, new target groups on a business model that was basically built on giving free access to all our content and then capitalizing on it by selling digital advertising. This is how it looked like, very simple. This is the first web page we made, and it was great fun those days. And I mean, the access we got to people was just amazing. The readership numbers of our titles more or less just doubled in a few years. Of course, it was all free writers, but nonetheless, we got access to a lot of new audience. And what you see here was that the traffic exploded in the first coming of the first years. And for our group, especially what we call the tabloid newspaper, the name is Ekstrabladet. For those of you who are familiar with the UK scene, it's very much similar to the Sun, maybe even to the Daily Mail. It's in profile around that. So it's a tabloid paper, and they gained the position as the biggest online news media in Denmark. And the broadcasters were not really fast at that time, so we had a really healthy position. And in the first couple of years, what we saw was that print advertising actually still grew until at least the financial crisis. And at the same time, we just built new revenues on top of that, coming from our digital advertising sales. So it was really interesting years, really exciting years. It was even that exciting that in order, to really take advantage of the model, we got what some of you might have heard of. We got what we call the big Danish free sheet war, because there was so much advertising dollars in the market that the media companies didn't just go for them digitally, they also went for them on print. So there was established 4 big national free sheet titles in Denmark. So there was a big fight for all the advertising dollars on top of the reach in those years. All that went down when the financial crisis came. And what we saw from the beginning of 2010 and forwards was the arrival of what we call the big tech giants. And they gained really position in this country very fast. In a few years, all of search was done through Google, and almost in a couple of years, 80% of Danes had a profile on Facebook. This was how it went on the advertising market. This is Google and Facebook's share of the digital ad spend in Denmark. So you see, what we thought was going to be our party became the party of Google and Facebook. And not only it became their party, they also became gatekeepers to the users. We managed to keep a direct contact to quite a lot of them, but nonetheless, both Google and Facebook, and for that part, Apple, today are very important gatekeepers to not just the users, but also to the advertisers. And especially Google has a strong position there. So instead of a new golden era for journalism, it became a not so golden age, we would say. Google and Facebook today dominate the digital ad spend or the digital ad market in Denmark. We still have both single copy sales in a structural decline, very fast one indeed in Denmark, and also print subscription in a structural decline in these years. And on top of that, we were also struggling with our print ad revenue. So not much to be happy about. Around 2015, actually, we were very depressed at that time. But then we arrived at the dawn of the era subscription. And how did we do that? And this is going for the rest part of my presentation to be very much about subscription. What happened to us was that in the beginning of 2010, we decided to experiment with what we call business-to-business verticals. And what is that? That is small digital-only news media addressing specific industries. What we did was that we hired a very little group of journalists, just 3 to 5 journalists, but they had to be the experts of the industry. They had to be those journalists that everybody in the industry needed to reach. And we did that as an experiment, and we decided to go for a pure subscription-based model. And it worked. Based on a cost base of just 5 journalists, we created a go-to media, a need-to-read media for the industry based on subscription only. Of course, on side of that, we also have some classified sales on job, but that came later. And what that turned out to be was that during the next 12 years, it has been developed into a business division of its own in our company. And it's quite interesting. We now have 28 of those verticals, and for all of them, the story has been the same. We went into break even after 3 years. In 5 years, the total investment was returned. We had to pay back, and from that point on, they were running with at least a 20% profit margin. So that was really interesting. It's not a high volume business, but it's a high profitable business. And this is the business that we're now going into Norway and Germany and the UK with. And it seems like we see the same traction there. So this is really interesting. And of course, we continue to invest in this. We see growth rates on this business of around 25 to 30% a year. Of course, it takes investments in order to build new ones, and you need to have some patience in the start. But you see, they have a really, really stable traction when you're first up and running. So really interesting. And when we saw that and started thinking about that, we thought, okay, we might actually apply this to our B2C media, our mainstream media. So we tried to do that. This is just to show you the traction of our difficult verticals. So you see they very much follow each other. There's just a few outliers here. So very interesting business. So what did that do to our thinking? It made us reflect. We were looking at B2C media really struggling with the competition from the big tech. We were not really able to monetize the reach we had gained. And at the same time, we were seeing our print business being in a normal structural decline. The print business is still with us, and we still really appreciate it, and it's still profitable, but we can't make any difference to the underlying structural decline. So it's a digital game. And to us, it was clear that the digital game has to be about subscriptions instead of free journalism. It has to be more about what I call here journalism. And what do I mean by that? I mean, not being the provider of what I would call basic news, which I think is a commodity and it's hard to monetize. You need to qualify the type of journalism you make. And going back to the very, I think, precise remarks of Mohit, it's about making content that raises curiosity, that really gives value, gives relevance to readers. And you have to be much more specific about that. And it takes education of the journalist, and it takes re-education of the journalist to get there. At the same time, instead of having as the big success criteria that you need to reach as many as possible, you need to be much more aware about who you want to reach with what kind of journalism. So you need to be much more specific about what kind of target groups do you aim at with the specific journalist you're doing, because you really can't be everything to everybody. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's really true. And it took some years for us to really realize it, because as a national news provider, we thought that we needed to provide the nation with the same kind of journalism to everybody. And you can't build a successful business on that. And that reflects in the last point here, going from what we realized was an unclear core of our value proposition. We've been working really hard to get a sharper value proposition to the specific target groups. So this, I would say, is like the 4 basic ingredients in our recipe for growth. And to give you an example, let me take Politiken, which is one of our major titles. Politiken is, you would describe it as a quality newspaper, whatever that is. It's often called the Guardian of Denmark. But as opposed to Guardian, which gives away the digital content for free, we have always tried to think about how we could get people to actually pay for it. Politiken has a really interesting target group, and that makes it, of course, a bit easier. They're well educated, high income, and they're highly urbanized as well. What we did first, and here we are in 2016, was that we tried with a hard paywall, and we said all the live feed, the digital live feed, you need actually to be a subscriber to get access to that. But that was all we had in the package. We hadn't put anything else into the package. It was just the live feed that we were charging for. So our other subscriptions were the same as they've always been. There was a print subscription and there was an e-paper subscription. And then there was this subscription. And we charged 10 euros for it, which was considered to be sort of the price for digital access at that time. At that time, Netflix, Spotify was already big in Denmark, and they were charging around the same. So we thought this was going to be the price we were going to charge. And it definitely didn't work. I mean, we sold around, I think it was 10,000 subscriptions at this price, and then it just stopped. So it was just the very loyal readers that's more or less thought they did this as, supportive, but it was not a product that gave any traction at all. So we had to rethink, and then we came up with this one. And opposed to many other media business, we started to think about how could we make a more attractive product that was even more expensive. And why did we do that? And this is because of the special background we have here. Being a paper that has a large part of its revenues come from subscription, Politiken has always charged a high subscription price on print. And we needed to be aware not to destroy that part of the business. And even though it's always better to cannibalize yourself than that other people do it, we really tried to find a balance here. And that helped us a lot, because when thinking about how do we actually raise the attractiveness of the product in order to justify a higher price, we started to understand we had to make the product offer more clear, more rich. And what we did was we put more stuff into it, especially the e-paper. And that was actually a surprise to me, because if you had asked me in 2015, would the e-paper bring any considerable value to this business, I would have said no. It was just, a transformative product that was not really going to attract a lot of people. But With a high iPad penetration in Denmark, it was really what did the work for us, because suddenly people understood that they could get access to something they really, was used to. They had built up some habit to use this kind of product where they started at page 1 and they ended at page 40. And that was really that product that gave the traction. And at the same time, we worked really hard to understand the target group that we were missing out on. And that was especially this target group, the 38 to 45 years old. And why did we work with this target group? This is because that's typically the time when people in Denmark really start to become stable subscribers. They have built a family, they have bought their apartment, their house. They really, they are building the family and the habits in the family. And this is the point where we really need to get them in as subscribers. If we get them on board at this time, there's like 30 to 40 years of customer lifetime value in these people. So this is the really important point to really attract them. And what we did was, and I come back to this a little bit later, we really look close at them. So, and what did it get us? It gave us a jump in digital subscription. So even though we doubled the price, we actually had a double up on our total volumes. And that gave us in 2018, I think it was for Politiken, the first time in the 21st century with a growth in total revenues. So we were not just able to compensate for the structural decline in print subscription, we were actually also able to compensate for the missing growth on advertising as well. And because it gave so much growth, and because making digital subscription, it's just such a profitable business. I mean, basically you have no marginal costs. It's just marginal revenues every time you sell a new subscription. There's a few sales costs, but it's just marginal profits. So we raised the profit margin from somewhere around 7 to 8% to almost 15% by the end of that decade for Politiken. So that was really successful. And as I said before, it's about extreme customer focus. And it's about really going outside of the newsroom to understand your customers and your subscribers. So what we did was, I mean, basically we told the newsroom to go and visit the readers. And we made big advertising ads in the papers saying that if you want a journalist to come and visit you, we would like to bring takeaway for a nice evening together with you. So all of our journalists was out there actually going home to our subscribers, having a long night discussions with them about how they use Politiken, what the needs was, what they found relevant, what was valuable for them. And that gave just a tremendous input back to the newsroom. And to see how that changed the way the newsroom worked with relevance, value for readers, instead of being first with the latest news as everybody else was, that was some of the most important stuff we did those years. And we still work with that. And then, and of course, a lot of you do that. But if you're in the subscription business, it's very much about the customer journey. One thing is to actually get people to try your product. That could be a month, for free, or it could be a 2 month for some low price. But it's not done with that. You really need to actually build up the habit, especially of the new subscribers. If you are like a 30-year-old who has never been subscribing to anything like this before, you don't just find out by yourself how you're going to use this product. What is interesting? How can I read it? How can I get access to all the things in the package? It could be the podcast we run in. It could be the loyalty programs we have attached onto it. You really need to get them onto that. So we're working very much with a very intense dialogue with every new subscriber, also the existing ones, because we need them to stay on board. And we always try to give them new offers and make them aware about what the value of our proposition is. So that's what we're working extremely much on these years. And then at this point, because having seen quite substantial subscription growth for the last 5 years now, we are coming to our Netflix moment as well. What we see now is a stagnation in the growth. Sorry about the sound of our Big Ben in Copenhagen. We are situated at the Town Hall Square. So what you hear now is the town hall saying it's 12 o'clock. Actually, and that's just a small remark. We're very excited these days because we're having what we call the Grand Depart of the Tour de France in Copenhagen on Friday. So everybody in Denmark is just like very excited right now. It's going to take place just in front of our building here. Okay, back to the presentation. What we're really working with now is how do we get new growth in a time where people are struggling a bit more economically, especially in Europe. Coming out of the pandemic, we were coming out with high hopes, but then at February the 24th, Russia decided to invade Ukraine. And that has really had a bad effect on especially consumer confidence in this country. So consumer confidence is the lowest it has ever been actually right now in the northern part of Europe. And we see a stagnation in our growth. So that means we really have to work about how can we combine different part of the product with different price points. More specifically, what we did last year was that because we were sort of, expecting this to happen at a point, we actually hired a consultancy firm, and this is not going to be a commercial, but even though they call Simon Kucher, they call themselves the McKinsey's of pricing. I don't know if that's right, but we made a really deep analysis of our potential customers and our current subscribers in order to understand what kind of price willingness and price points would we be able to work with in the future. And that has been of great value to us. Yeah, I should still say we still love ads. It's not just about subscription. We still have quite a comprehensive reach. And what we have now, and that's the really interesting thing, is we have really attractive target groups. And the context has become even more interesting for the advertisers, a specific group of advertisers. And then we have a really brand safe environment. We can guarantee you that your advertising is not coming up with every kind of crap and junk. And then we offer the market to be very transparent. More specifically, what we have done is that because I don't know how it is in India, but in Europe, we're expecting the third-party cookie to more or less be phased out. And that means we're really working on our first-party data. We'll build our own platform for using our first-party data. We call it Relevance, and it very much combines our audience with our context, and it works quite well. We need to get it implemented as one of the go-to systems at the media agencies, but we're getting there. But in order to support that, we've also joined forces with a lot of other Danish media companies, actually the biggest others, in order to create a common publisher platform for Danish media and Danish publisher media, we call it. That's why it's called the publisher platform. And that it's not giving us tremendous revenues, but it's a good signal to the market in order to tell the story about how our specific kind of context, how our target groups can bring value to them. So yeah, we're definitely not falling out of love with the advertising. Yeah. So last, before I can open up for some questions, how did the growth recipe work? As you see here, we're not really gaining growth until 2020, even though we got a little bit, and that's from our digital subscription in 2019. But we set a target of actually going from 3 billion Danish kroner, around 450 million euros, to 5 billion Danish kroner in 2025. And that to some people looked insane at the moment when we presented this, but this is how it's going right now. It's going really good. And this is the story about digital subscription growth. And it's also a story about, and I'm not going that much into that because I'm not sure that would be of great relevance to you. It's also a story about our last mile distribution network really actually supporting our growth here. But we feel comfortable right now of actually going to these 5 billion Danish kroner in 2025. Of course, it takes some investments, but it's primarily organic investments actually. We acquire a few things, but it's basically built on actually us investing in organic growth. And this is, as I told you before, the major ingredients in the growth. We've been going from print to digital as everyone else, and actually not that fast. as you see, print is still a big part of our business, and we really appreciate it, and it still attracts quite interesting ARPUs. People are willing to pay a quite high price for our print product still. But the basic thing here is that, and going back to Mr. Mohit Jain's remarks about content, it's really about the true value of content and how we're really monetizing that at the moment. And this will be my last slide. And this is, I think, a really interesting correlation. It's a correlation I can't, prove that there is what they call it, that the one thing actually cause the others. You call it causation, don't you? But there's a correlation between what you see here on the right side. That's the growth of digital subscription on news media in the Nordic countries, and at the same time, you see a greater trust score in these countries. And I think that's a really interesting correlation here, because I think having us focus not just on news, but on journalism, if I dare to say that, it can be discussed, but I explained before what I mean. We actually build up trust as well. I'm totally aware that you can't build subscription business everywhere. We have special environment, we come from a special country, but if you can, I think a really interesting byproduct of it is it actually raises trust in news media as well. So with that, I hope we are looking into a new golden age for journalism. I strongly feel that, and I strongly hope that some of this has been useful to you, but I'm totally aware that I come from a small country in the Nordic region, so it might not be that relevant, but we would definitely love to tell you more about it. If anybody of you would like bilateral sessions with some of our advertising people, we are always ready to share our experience, so just reach out to us. And if you don't already have my contact info, I'm sure that Magdum can provide you with it. So thanks a lot for this.
Magdum, you're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute, Magdum.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Is that audible now? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So we have maybe 3 or 4 minutes left before we move to the next session. I think you gave a very fitting opening keynote for the Indian Media Leaders E-Summit. Thank you for sharing the insights. But I think a lot of issues are common for publishers, irrespective of the size and the scale. There's one question from the audience, and then maybe I'll put that first, and then I have one more which you can ask quickly, 2-3 minutes. And with an audience from Charuthala, okay, is asking what investments required, when you started, pivoting to digital, so does it require a big investment before, or so talking about moving from your print to moving to digital, and then you talked about recipes, and then how do you transform, and then set up a small team. Does it require a big investment in the beginning, or when is the time to scale up investments? I think that's probably the question.
Yeah, very good question. The way we did it was we did it very incrementally. So when we started up with those small verticals, the total investments was around 1 million euro. That was it. And as I said, we had a payback of that in 5 years. But of course now, because we see the traction, we are discussing very much how do we scale this, because it's not a high volume business. But actually we found out now it's scalable. But in rough figures, using the kind of newsroom we're working with here, around 5 journalists, you need sort of to have an investment of 1 million euros from the beginning, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. And how about the competition? Because it's a relatively small market, and so is competition doing the same? And then what is kind of challenge to scale up, given the size of the market?
Very good question. What we see now is, because people have seen the success of our verticals, is that we're seeing a new interest entering the market. And of course, that's a problem, because actually the entry barrier is not that large or that high. So that's exactly why we're very much talking about how actually to scaling up right now in order to gain the market positions. Because as soon as you, especially in small countries, of course, and regions as soon as you get the position as the need to read vertical about that specific industry, that be it shipping, medical, whatever. It's quite hard for other entries to come in and gain that. And I really have to add on to the point about the true value of content here. It's about hiring the best journalists. So there's a competition for them. And of course, they will become more attractive, those journalists these days. So there comes a cost with that. But of course, we have to be aware of that as well.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. I think there are a few more questions, but I mean, we may run out of time. So maybe we'll post this question to you, and then we can answer them later if you have the time. But thank you for joining from Denmark, and it was a pleasure having you. And thank you, Mr. Mohit Jain. Pleasure having you too. And then I'll see you all in another event soon, and hopefully catch up.
Thank you very much, and I hope you'll get a tremendous event here with a lot of knowledge. And thank you so much for